And the more we can just feel our own self-confidence and acknowledge who we are, the less we're worried about, taking down others.
What's up, folks? My name is T. Pearson, and I want to welcome you back to another great episode of Positive Voices. Today, I have a fellow unicorn sitting with myself and my co-host,
Malachi Stewart.
Yes, and so let me just bring on our guest so that he could tell you why he's a unicorn and why it is important for us to talk about straight Black men, right, as it relates to HIV and AIDS. So how you doing today?
I'm doing well.
So who are you? Because folks is like, well, who is this person? Why they a unicorn?
Why am I a unicorn?
Right, because I'm a unicorn too. I loves it.
So my name is Larry Bryant. I'm a native Washingtonian. I think one of the reasons why I'm considered a unicorn is being a straight heterosexual male living with HIV for over 37 years.
Yes, can I snap for the 37
Yes,
years?
you're an OG
right?
in the game.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Listen, Larry. Larry. It has been so hard. So if I could just be transparent with our audience for a second.
Right, please do.
Y'all. We're going to be transparent, kind of going behind the third wall, the fourth wall,
Yeah.
to let you know that we were trying to book an episode. And we really tried this season to be so inclusive of what HIV looks like for all people. And so in trying to book an episode where we wanted the perspective of a straight Black male,
Yeah.
finding a straight Black male who was willing to talk about their status
Openly.
on camera.
Yeah.
We have tried everything. I mean, we were offering people to shoot over the shoulder so that we didn't see them. We were offering to Black people out to do voice distortions, to sign NDAs, to clear the set. Like we tried so many methods and we could not find anyone. And then we found Larry. Then my producers saw your article with Paz Magazine, and you just fell out of the sky. What has your experience been? Do you often feel like you're the only person? Because that's what we mean by you being a unicorn. Like,
Right.
not just that you're living with
Rare.
HIV as a straight man,
Right.
but that you're willing to talk about the experience. Have you felt like a unicorn?
Not really. I mean, because I know other men, other heterosexual men who are living with HIV who just don't feel comfortable being as public as everyone else would like them to be, as I would like them to be. And it says a lot about the stigma, the fear, and just the pressure around just that exists, not just around HIV, but just the pressure that exists, particularly for Black men, to represent a certain standard, if you will. And a lot of men feel self-conscious about being presented in that way, certainly with the flaws that come, that are reported to come with Black men and just being a Black man in America today. But now add HIV to that, and that is all of a sudden another thing that we feel challenged by or boxed in by.
So can I ask you a question about that? So with your statement, right, do you think what do you think rather would be a movement forward within the Black male straight community to be able to say, yes, I'm positive, but my life still continues to go on, and kind of that whole thing?
I mean, that's going to be different for any man.
Yeah.
That threshold, that whatever, how you define safe and the difference between safe and being vulnerable.
Yeah.
For me, it was just about, first, when I was diagnosed, it was in an environment of, even before the term HIV positive existed, I was, diagnosed with the virus that causes AIDS. And the doctor that diagnosed me told me I was going to die, and he even gave me a year.
Wow.
So that was one thing. That's one kind of trauma to kind of suffer or survive through in order to get, regain balance, to be able to find that yes.
Yeah.
And so with that, I'm sorry to interrupt, but so with the move forward, is it the status, right? Getting the positive status is the part that's grabbing hold, or the stigma of it? Right, in that statement
It's
you
the
just made.
status is first.
Okay.
Because the status is absorbed internally.
Yeah, okay.
I knew about my status 5 years before anyone else did.
Okay.
And I already felt like I was dying.
Yeah.
But living as a Black man in America, the framework, the definition of safe and secure is fractured long before HIV even enters the picture.
Gotcha.
So yes, I could. In fact, I said this a few years ago. We could find a cure for HIV. We could find a pill, a dose of something that could eliminate the virus today. And I and millions of people living with HIV around the world would then be HIV negative.
Yeah.
But then as a Black man, I'm still jumping over those cracks that exist in the culture. But again, particularly in this country, that seek to kind of just take, little pieces of me out of, away from my soul, away from my being. So there's a lot that exists long before HIV. But then even with HIV, it just makes finding that balance, finding that safe space that much more difficult. And the response, the stigma, the ignorance that you get from community members, from just people who don't know what they're talking about, and a lot from political leaders, from leaders and decision makers who make decisions that deplete resources, that take away interventions in those communities. So it's all of that, but then it's surviving oneself, being able to identify who I am and then then learning how to take those steps going forward.
And that's definitely like relatable even to myself being a gay Black man. The Black man part, when you live in a society where there is so much stigma that Black men face, you could cure HIV, but if only we could cure stigma. But I heard you talking about, and I want to back up a little bit because you dropped some gems about when you were diagnosed. Take us back. What year was it? What were the circumstances surrounding it? Like, tell us about like the moment where you found out what you know about your cell conversion. Like, share a little.
Okay, so wow. So as a freshman in college, can I say what school I went to? I'm going to say what school I went to. Went to Norfolk State University.
Yes, that. Let them know.
Hello.
I went there as on a football scholarship. I graduated from formerly known as T.C. Williams across the river in Alexandria. I was All-American football player in high school, and I had just completed my first year in college, was also a Black college All-American then as a freshman.
Okay.
I had, at least in my mind, I had chances of going pro, at least goals of going pro. It was being followed by agents and others at the time.
Oh, yeah, you was about to be all the way NFL.
I hoped. And then I think during spring, during off season, a lot of my friends and teammates, we would do like different things around the community to, as a football player, just kind of be a part of the community events. So volunteer at a youth center, not across the street, but in the neighborhood, or donating blood at the blood bank in downtown Norfolk. Went to donate and had some trouble, didn't drink enough water. And so it was just kind of a challenge to get any blood.
Dehydration.
Yeah.
But then I donated, but then and no one said anything. Came back, I don't know, a month later, whenever. And of course, again, as a broke college student, donating blood on the weekends, getting like $15, $20 was like, cha-ching, we have a party.
Yeah, that's that Walmart money.
Yeah.
Well, for us, it was like 7-Eleven, beer and nachos.
You could buy a lot of noodles with $15.
Yeah. So,
Couple six-packs, too.
Oh, yeah. So we went back the next time, and all my friends went in, and the nurse said, "Nope, you can't go in. The doctor wants to talk to you before you go in."
To you.
To me, just me. So I'm sitting in the lobby, and this was weird back in the 80s, 86. This is the year between my freshman and sophomore year. So the blood bank was weird because you direct cross. You go in, it's like a storefront on the street. You walk in, and immediately in the door there is a bunch of chairs where you sit, like the waiting room, and then there's a big like array of files, I guess, where everyone puts their files, and then behind that is where everyone sits, the receptionist and everything. So it was so weird that, in retrospect, that everything confidential is sitting there between the waiting room and so that's just the environment of 86. So a doctor eventually comes out, and he says, "Mr. Bryant, come on back." And then I remember walking in, and I didn't think about it until later, but it was like a tight squeeze. he like exaggerated, like he did not want to touch me. Again, I didn't think about it. I just thought it's small, but it wasn't that tight. But he kind of exaggerated and went back. And then I went in and sat down, and I felt I was about 10, maybe 15 feet from his desk. And there was like a lamp over him, and then I felt like there was a light over me. So it felt like that scene from The Godfather, when the guy is going in and asking, like on...
You're like, I'm about to be interrogated,
Right.
Or, yes, or
Yeah.
worse. And he basically said, at least what I remember vividly, was like 2 or 3 things he wanted me to know. One was the donation I gave last time tested positive for the antibodies that causes HIV. So it was before the term HIV positive existed. And he kept saying some other terms, but basically that my white blood cell, my T cell count, all measured in a way that, based on his measurements, I had about 8 or 9 years to live. That's, because common knowledge at that point. I remember people later, like Melvin Lindsay from WHUR, DJ, and others, you would see them, like they would disappear, and then all of a sudden you see them in the paper, lost, 100 pounds and weeks from death. And that image was in my head. And then, of course, the last thing he wanted me to know was I could not come back to donate blood again. He gave me a pamphlet and said, okay, peace out. I sat back in the lobby, and I just waited for everyone to come back. And I didn't know what to say other than kind of go back to that first time. Well, I was dehydrated the first time. The nurse, I made up something weird, like the nurse said, it'd probably be a good idea if you didn't donate blood today for that reason. And that's pretty much what I said, and I left and didn't talk about it again. And then it was like another 5 years before I did finally tell my mom.
What was that like? How did that conversation go?
So over the 5 years, it kind of built up to a point. I first of all, I left school after that. I played another season, kind of halfway played through another season. I started to, fell out of classes. My mind was elsewhere, so to speak. But I couldn't tell anyone. And then rumors would come around, and the girl I was dating at the time, I told her, I just basically just kind of pulled back. And I didn't tell her why. And of course, people were getting mad at me, and all kinds of rumors were happening, just swirling like, what's wrong with Larry? And then eventually, I after a while, I left school. I attempted suicide twice while off campus. The second time landed me in the hospital for like a week. And then I realized I needed to get out of Norfolk. So I went back home, and I just tried to figure out what I was going to do. I told my family, just asked, wait, you're about to go pro. You're playing football. What's going on? No one really asked me, but I guess they figured I'd talk about it at some point. And I did I guess my last shot was like, I could join the military. And that way I have free health care, and I could just work through it. And I already got some college credits, so I can, kind of go a little bit ahead of the line as far as
come in as an officer, get a little extra coin.
And it was around the time that the NFL Europe was starting. And I was like, I still have a shot to play football. So I could get, stationed in Germany, play for the German NFL team, and I could still, play. I was just trying to do these acrobatics in my brain.
Yeah.
And I went, and it was the Marines. And I remember, and I said this earlier, as a kid, so I'm the oldest. I'm a junior. My dad's in the Air Force. And everyone used to ask me, all my aunts and grandparents used to ask, so you're going to follow your dad's footsteps and go into the military?
Legacy.
I was like, I was like, no, I don't want to. Because I couldn't see myself carrying a gun, joining the military. It just wasn't on my list of things to do.
I'm an Army vet too, so I get it.
Yeah.
The free stuff was what we brings you in.
The free stuff, the
Yeah.
travel.
And I was stationed in Germany, so when you just said you wanted to play over there, I was like, oh, that would have been cute.
Maybe, yes.
Yeah. So you go to join.
So I'm haunted by recruiters because this was like a little bit before Desert Storm. And so I was going to school in Norfolk and then I come back home. So I'm always around recruiters. And then one day I'm like, okay, the guy recruiting for Marines gives me the best cell job I could be in special forces, blah, blah, blah. Just kind of giving me the
recruitment talk.
similar to what the coaches were doing for a scholarship to, trying to get me to go to their college. So I kind of took the best deal, so to speak. And I remember I even took the oath, did everything,
Oh,
answered
got
all the
sworn
questions,
in
took
and
the
everything.
oath,
Okay.
all that.
Oh, so you was
was in
ready.
there.
Yeah, you was in there. You was ready.
You almost had a rucksack.
I thought. And then there was the first year or the first time, like it was during the year, where they, this was 91 now, where they started testing the for HIV. So when they took when they injected the needle, I was like, oh, here we go. So even then I was like, well, maybe it won't show up. Maybe I'll get through this.
You got to be hopeful. Like maybe you won't.
Hopeful, delusional, yeah. It's,
It's
the reality is somewhere in between.
And it's the military, so they could have really been behind on technology a little bit. So,
That's true.
that would have been a good thought.
I had hopes, delusional
no shade
hopes.
to the military.
Right.
Yeah.
Army stronghold.
So I just waited, and by the end of the day, that's when they knew, or I think it was maybe a couple of days later, they knew the recruiter who was going to get a pretty big, I guess, commission from me was, I wasn't sure if he was upset to give me the news or he was upset that he lost the commission.
Lost his commission.
But he gave me the letter and said, I can't go, sorry, but you tested positive. And the letter kind of said everything that the first doctor said. And then at that point, he dropped me off in front of my mom's house. And at that point, I felt like there's nothing I can do now. This is it. I have to face it. I have to talk about it. I can leave school, even though I'm going, I have all this attention playing football. I'm in school, all that. I'm on scholarship. I can leave. That can make sense. I can make it make sense. I can't make sense. I took the oath, and now I just walked away from Marines.
Yeah.
So I had to tell my mom at that point. And that's when 5 years of just holding it in, of having the worst secret kept that I could ever keep in my brain, just came out. All the emotion, everything came out. And I told her what happened, told her why I left school, told her what happened at the Red Cross. And I was doing it all through tears. And I remember a moment during like my talking, she was like, okay, you wait here. I was sitting on the couch just bawling. She goes upstairs. I don't remember, at least I wasn't thinking at the time what she was doing. But knowing her, she probably went upstairs and prayed, cried, and then she came back down, and then she was just there for me. We called my dad, we called my siblings, and it's been fortunate that they have been that supportive since, well, I should say day one, but 5 years in, then day one, when I allowed them to know what was going on.
Yeah, shout out to the family
Shout
and the
out,
support
yes.
systems. Yes, thank you for those.
Yeah.
And I realized that, I mean, I've been doing this for a while, and I've been living with this for a while, and I realized that's a very powerful support that can't be underestimated. Because I know a lot of friends and family who have had the opposite.
Absolutely. I was going to say, hearing your story, you're a unicorn in more than one way. Because in my experience of just like working in the field, a lot of times when I do have straight male partners, especially when they're cisgender, straight, and Black, because there is so much stigma and expectation in the Black community around what it means to be masculine, what it means to be a man, what it means to like be healthy. There's a fear of like, to some extent, and we talked about this on a different episode, I always felt like when I told my mother came to the realization that I was gay, which should have been obvious. I always, but because big gay, not the little one, real bad.
Capital G.
Capital G, honey. He came out like swirling. But I felt like there was always an expectation or fear from my black mama of like this could happen. I remember even when I told my mom, it was like, you got the virus. Before I even finished the sentence, I said, Mom, I need to tell you something. I'm looking down, and she just immediately. But I feel like for black men, it's because it's not expected when you're straight. It's like, well, how did you contract it? Are you on drugs? Are you DL? Are you? And so for you to have your mother not only accept you, but then help you navigate disclosure to your family and open that door for you, do you think that made a difference? And it would have been different for you had she responded differently?
Probably. I probably would have responded differently. It's like, again, I can't say that type of support is immeasurable and then say, if I didn't get the support, I'd be fine anyway.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I'd like to think I would have landed on my feet and made good decisions down the road, even if that initial response was different. But it's impossible to know. But at this point, but again, fortunate that the support I got initially from my family was what it was. But then the other side of that is, well, it's interesting because I think when I did disclose, and you said all the things that your mom wanted to warn you about because how your sexuality would influence some things, decision making, otherwise, put you at risk at certain things than others.
Yeah.
Which was interesting to me because I don't know exactly what my family thought.
Yeah.
Like, because there were people who thought, well, he's HIV positive, or clearly he's gay. Or at
I'm
least
sure.
I was going to ask you that.
Yeah.
And I used to, and of course, this came later when I started working in the field of understanding language and interventions and everything. But it's the human immunodeficiency virus. It's not the gay or the GRID, as formerly, and light years ago used to be called.
Yeah.
Anyone who has unprotected sex is vulnerable.
It doesn't discriminate.
Is at risk.
The
Exactly.
virus doesn't discriminate.
Yes.
I mean, and we know that like certain sexual behaviors are more high risk. We get that, right? Like, yes, I'm gay. The type of sex I have does put me more at risk. And I am exposed to a community of people who are more at risk and more likely to.
Right.
But I love that you said that. Like, it doesn't discriminate, and it doesn't mean, it's not 1 + 1 = 2. It doesn't mean like, oh, you're a straight man, you must be DL because you're HIV positive. You must be on drugs because you're HIV positive. I had sex, and I think probably, do you get compared a lot to Magic Johnson? I just have to ask that because, that's probably the only straight male that publicly, like, I've ever seen, like, I have HIV. And even with Magic Johnson, people, was whispering, like, we don't believe him. We either don't believe that he has HIV or we don't believe that he's a straight black man.
Yeah. It was a lot of rumors swirling around that time, too. Yeah.
So it was his kind of public disclosure that helped influence my sharing. Because that happened around 1991, same time when I told my mom.
Okay.
So, and even with the questions, I wonder what really happened with Magic, or who Magic really is. I don't know. I was so busy just worrying how I was going to survive.
Yeah.
I didn't necessarily worry about the rumors or the gossip or whatever was happening, and so it just didn't bother me. But I understood. And I think it goes deeper just to how, particularly in D.C., in the 80s and 90s, being a black boy in this city, you had to be hard.
Yeah.
You had to be tough.
Yeah.
You had to be, and I honestly, I played football. I was not any of those things. I mean, I was a shy, introverted kid that when I was 10 years old, my dad took me kicking and screaming out to a football field and said, "You're going to play." I ended up being good at it. I liked it. But I've always been kind of an introvert, kind of to myself, not the quote unquote stereotypical, boy. And I've had men in my life who punished me, I guess you could say, for not being
That's tough.
that,
Yeah.
that
For
type
not
of
living up
dude.
to the expectations.
Yeah.
of
Their
what
expectations.
Yeah, their expectations of masculinity. Yeah.
And I think that is part of what fuels the internal stigma
Yes.
that drives young men to like, no, you can't see my vulnerability. I don't care what color it is, what it looks like. And that kind of complicates how men, heterosexual men, process not just HIV, but process their own sexuality, process their own identity, their own being, how they are interacting and reacting to others. It's all built on this kind of myth of who they should be. And that's evolved over, since the 80s and the 90s. But that kind of I'm going to be hard mentality, I'm going to be this, and not show any of that vulnerability or perceived vulnerabilities, that still exists. It just comes in different forms now.
For sure.
But yeah, that part, going back to what we talked about at the top, where there's not a whole lot of heterosexual men talking about the HIV status publicly. I think largely that's at the root of that. Obviously there's so many other things, so many factors that contribute to that man's experience that keeps them kind of protected, keeps them closed.
Yeah.
But a large part of that is built around identity and who am I supposed to be? Who do people see when they look at me? Who do they hear? What do they hear when I speak? And sometimes we get caught up on that instead of just being ourselves, instead of just absorbing and accepting who we are and then
That's
building
powerful.
on that.
I appreciate you saying
Thank you for that.
For sure.
Yes. I can't imagine the darkness of trying to be a regular black boy at Norfolk University, this college. I'm sure you was the big man around town, and you had the girls, because you was the football star, right? And then you said you had someone that you were speaking to, and you had your boys, and kind of just living the black boy joy on college campus. So when you got your diagnosis the first time, right? I can imagine that's like a doctor at the clinic. He probably ain't a real doctor for real because he work here on school campus. You know what I'm saying? So I see this paper and I'm going to process it, but what did you do to process healthy, right? Because I'm sure it was a lot of dark, right? Within that moment, but one day had to become another day, even if you didn't want it to be.
It took a long time to get there.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that I was fighting for anything other than that I wanted to die going forward.
Wow.
I didn't, at the time I was diagnosed, the only treatment that was available was AZT. And there was a lot of people, AZT, hugely toxic. A lot of people were dying or just becoming sick and then dying because of the treatment. I said, well, I'm just going to take a chance with the virus and see what happens. And if I'm going to go out swinging. So that's why I wanted to find something to do, Army, whatever, just to be doing something going forward. But I had a date in my mind that I was going to die. I was going to not make it. And the thing, I struggled with that reality or eventual reality, and knowing that one day I could just die, disappear, go away, and then my family would be when they found out. Wow. And I didn't want that.
So were you kind of waiting in those 5 years to see what was going to happen?
I didn't know. I was paralyzed. I just wanted to, it was like being knocked off a ship. I'm in the middle of the ocean. My instinct is, how can I not drown? How do I keep my head above water? That was my instinct. I had no idea where I was going to go, which direction to go. I just want to tread water for as long as I can.
And you weren't on medication at that time?
No.
Are you a long-term non-progressor?
I am now.
And what
Okay.
does that mean?
So a long-term non-progressor is a person living with HIV who is able to go long periods of time without being medicated, but still maintain a moderately low viral load,
Okay.
which is the amount of virus in your body, and a moderately healthy CD4 count, which is like you measure the CD4 count. That sort of measures how healthy your body is. And those numbers vary based upon age. There are a lot of factors that play into that, but each like demographic like has a, you know, if you're in your 30s, what a normal CD4 count looks like is different than in your 60s. Long-term non-progressors are able to not be medicated, but kind of go a long time, like, and still be relatively healthy. The virus is progressing very slowly over a long period of time. Unfortunately, like Larry, most people find that out because they either don't have access to medication, because of stigma, they won't medicate. So those are usually the reason people find out.
Because they don't have access to clinical
Because
trials.
they don't have access to, exactly. Because we're not included a lot of times in clinical trials. All the time minorities aren't included. And sometimes, again, because of stigma, we don't want to participate in those
Right.
things. So
Gotcha.
I want to ask you, on a much lighter note, because I'm so interested. I know so many stories of like dating, love, and family planning when it comes to being queer, when it comes to being a part of the alphabet mafia and being HIV positive. But
That
as a
was
straight
the
man, what
alphabet
did that look like
mafia.
for you? Alphabet
Right.
mafia, big gang.
Right.
What did that look like dating and family planning? What did that look like for you as a straight man who's HIV
Well,
positive?
there was no family planning. There was just, and there was very little, if at all, dating. I felt comfortable. I started to feel, well, I don't know about comfortable, but I started feeling that possibilities would exist because once I started working in the field, then it was the assumption that because I was working in the field that I must be positive. And that I could talk to other people about being HIV positive and it felt comfortable. That wasn't the same if you just went to the random corner bar
Right.
Right.
and someone pull up next to you and you start having a conversation. There's no subtle way to like, oh, by the way, I am living with HIV.
Right.
You know,
Right.
and certainly if it gets to the point where someone asks me, so what do you do? And I say, well, I work in the field of, HIV and AIDS advocacy and activism and blah, blah, blah. And so it eventually, and it's like, so why do you do that? How long have you done that? So, and usually the conversation would end with like skid marks, them going in the other direction. Well, I mean, it became kind of I just avoided it. I tried to just stay away from, people wanting to get too close to me. And then before I was diagnosed with HIV positive, I was already talking about mental health issues. I was living with depression and anxiety. So, yes, I was the big football star, but I was not, without the football stuff, I was not that guy.
Got you.
And so it was never really, HIV or not, dating was never really easy for me.
Okay.
Just because I'm a nerd.
And nothing wrong with being a nerd.
And now.
Yeah, now.
Right.
Shout out to the blurs out there.
But eventually it took a lot of, and I had relationships along the way. It wasn't until probably 2002, 2003 that I realized, okay, I might not die.
Hello.
I went to left the Red Cross. I didn't go back to a doctor until like 2002. I was living in Houston. I started working in the field. I felt like, if I'm going to work in the field as a health educator, I probably should take care of myself.
Yeah.
So
That's a good thought.
that's when I went to a clinic there in Houston and just started from scratch. Just said, I would like to take an HIV test. And they introduced myself to them. They had no idea who I was. And they came back with my blood work and said, well, you got a pretty, you're doing pretty good. And we have a couple of more questions for you. Well, and then they left the room. And then he came back and was like, wait a minute, when did you say you were diagnosed? And I said, well, 86. And then what have you done since then? It's like, well, nothing. I just came to see you. And that's when I first learned about the possibility of being a long-term non-progressor.
Okay.
So if I had taken the AZT or whatever treatment at the beginning, then I never would learn that. But that was when I started building towards kind of just being my own level of competent. and knowing how to protect myself and then understanding how to protect others. But then between that, how to actually have a conversation with someone that led to a point where then I had to make a decision about safe sex or whatever. But it took a while, and I've met a lot of people over the years that tried, that I tried, and I just wasn't ready. And it wasn't until like maybe 5-6 years ago that I started really entertaining, opening the idea, the possibility that I could be in a relationship. I found out along the way also, talk about just adventures of my life,
We like the ride. We like the story of the journey. We
that
love it.
woman that I was dating in college, Yolanda, she was pregnant with my
Oh.
son. I didn't know. She did. I don't think she knew, or at least if she knew, she didn't tell me. And because of my mindset at the time, I wouldn't have been
Okay.
surprised.
And this was prior to your diagnosis.
This was prior. No, this was when I knew,
Okay.
but
so
she
same
didn't
time.
know.
Okay.
But she didn't know.
And then eventually she transferred, went to a different school, had Dominique, my son. And I was in a bad place when she left me, and I thought I was doing her a favor. I didn't know she was pregnant, but I thought I was doing her a favor, but just like, you don't want to be with me.
Yeah.
But then one day in 2006, I think, at the first presidential debate, or 2008, first presidential debate of John McCain. John McCain and Barack Obama. I could not think of his name the other day. I'm driving a bunch of people. I'm working for an organization where we're doing a bunch of advocacy work around HIV, around, making sure whoever our next president will put in policies that will help ultimately end the epidemic, blah, blah, blah. We brought people from all over the East Coast and Midwest to Oxford, Mississippi, were there for the debate, and then literally drove a van back to D.C.
Okay.
During that ride, Yolanda's sister emails into Paz Magazine. I'm on the cover that year or the year before. And during that interview, I talk about like one of the things I wish/regret. At that point, I didn't think I had a child. And I was like, one of the things I wish is that I have the opportunity to have a child. I don't know if that's ever going to happen.
Yeah.
And she, I guess, reads the article and emails in, like, how you go to the bottom, you want to leave a comment. The people at Pause were like, well, we didn't want to put that on the website. We just contacted Larry directly. And that's when I found out I had a son.
Wow.
I know you gagged, because I just gagged when you told me.
Wow.
So I know you were just, what was that like? Like, I mean, because you found out you had a son, and then your son knows.
But through an email,
HIV.
too,
Through an
right?
email, you found out you had a son. Now your son, you was in Paz magazine, so you don't know. What was that like, that conversation?
So as he tells it, his mom had been looking for me, and or just kind of this is the early years of Facebook, and we're all kind of being this gravitational
Moving from
pull of
MySpace.
social media, MySpace, scary MySpace, and he does a Google search, sees my picture, the cover photo on Pause, and goes to his mom. He's like, "Is this him? Is this my dad?" And she was like, "Yeah, that's him." So that's how he was introduced to me. And I got home. I was like, I can't talk to him. I'm driving. I haven't slept in like 3 days. I'm driving home. Let me get to the other end, and then let's talk on the phone. And then she calls me, Yolanda calls me, and then puts him on. And it's like at that moment, I just melted. Like it was like, wow. I remember to this day, it was like a wow. And he's like, well, he understood what was going on. He saw my picture in Pause Magazine, my story, my words. The only thing he's interested in is like, do you mind if I call you dad?
Oh.
It was one of
my
those kind of.
Don't be saying that when I got my face
Hello.
done and I'm on camera.
Hello.
It's gonna make my eyes leak.
So yeah, it's
Okay.
one of those kind of.
Oh my gosh.
But
Yes.
and so after that, soon after that, we kind of make plans to meet each other. He's going to school at the time. He's playing football. He's wearing he wore my number in high school. He plays the same position. He has the same major.
Oh,
All these
what?
things.
Legacy.
Hello,
Legacy.
JR.
Yes.
Yay. See, and you started with saying you're a junior, and look at that.
Yeah.
See?
Yeah. So there's been like, I'm fortunate that that doctor from the Red Cross was wrong. Because, and this is, I think, some of the things that I try to share when I meet people anywhere. It's like, you know, we do this work. I do this work around, advocacy, advocating for life-saving services for people living with HIV, not just the HIV care, but the supportive services, everything, housing. You
Yeah.
want to, we're talking about a healthy whole human, not just blood human or the blood in the human. And all the things that we're fighting for, we're wanting to save. Yes, it's saving lives, but it's also those memories, our culture, all of the moments that I would have lost, I would have missed out on if I weren't here, including, the obvious thing is like actually meeting my son, but
Yeah.
there's so many things along the way, hearing other people's stories, sharing those experiences of that journey, even if it's just in moments and minutes with people. And I'm proud of that involvement. And I think, what am I happy for that I didn't, that doctor was not correct, is being able to contribute to everything that I've contributed to this point, and being able to share that story, and hopefully something that helps someone else find themselves and find their own footing, their own platform, their own confidence, and be able to share that with others. Because that self-confidence is we can all live on our own. I love the idea of independence and being able to do for ourselves, but it's so much better, so much more valuable when you can share that with someone else, whoever that person is, family, partner, friend, whoever that is, even if it's just in the community.
For sure.
Yeah.
And we definitely are also glad that doctor was wrong, because the world needed your light.
Yes.
You definitely, you're a unicorn for a reason, but in the best of ways. Just as we kind of wrap up, I want to just say one of the things that we know, right, in healthcare is that Black men who are living with HIV tend to live longer than Black men who are not, just because we're going to the doctor. We have to get our labs done. We have to, even if you are undetectable and you typically go like once a year if you're undetectable. You don't have to go a
But
lot.
look what it took to get us there.
And that's what I wanted. That's exactly where I was going
Yeah.
with what I wanted to. It's not even a question, but what I wanted to ask you to do, because we know that it's so hard. And you kind of talked about the stigma of you have to be rough and tough, and it doesn't look like going to the doctors. Like my grandfather died with colon cancer, and we ain't never known. Now we knew Big Mama had sugar, but we didn't ever talk about his. And he felt like that vulnerability of even sharing it or knowing it made it not a safe space. As a Black man, as a straight man, as a person who is intersectional in those ways, can you just close us with whatever your call to action would be to people who identify as such, with regard to the healthcare, to even if those that are living with HIV and are also straight Black men and afraid to engage or not knowing how to navigate those conversations, whatever your call to action would be, what would you say to them?
There's a lot I could say. One thing or a couple of things is for Black men who look and sound like me, homophobia, that hurts us as well. Having those kind of destructive kind of mindsets, it deteriorates us, and it doesn't fully allow us to connect and share who we are with people, and to those who need to hear our story, or who could provide support when necessary. The toxic, masculine shields that we run around with as kids and grow up and still think we're kids playing war games. We need to put. Trying so hard not to cuss here. We need to put that stuff down, and fully embrace the community around us.
Yes.
There's a lot of energy it takes to hate for no reason.
No reason.
And the opposite of that is just being accepting, being caring, being empathetic to others. And that helps us as much as it can help someone else. And the more we can just feel our own self-confidence and acknowledge who we are, the less we're worried about, taking down others in order to kind of lift ourselves up. So I'm hoping that I challenge other straight heterosexual men living with HIV to sit where I'm sitting or wherever they are, and they don't need to get on a camera and do a podcast. Talk to someone, listen to someone, have a conversation about. You don't have to be living with HIV as a black man to have a conversation about how HIV affects us, all of us, whether you're living with it or not. And we just need to be more willing to accept the community around us, and it's a rich and beautiful community.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Listen,
Woo.
y'all, on that note,
Oh, I'm so full.
that was so powerful.
Yes.
I'll
Thank you
just
so
say
much.
thank you so much, Larry, for being here. Thank you all for joining this conversation with me and T. And listen, y'all heard the call. The action is really like, if you were living with HIV, you were a black straight man, you were a white straight man, you any color of a straight man. Advocacy. This was your invitation. You are welcome to the table. Listen, if you're watching this, and we talked about a lot of resources and the need for that on today's episode. If you need any resources, HIV related or not, and you are anywhere in the country, you can go to www.linkudmv.org, and you can just type in your zip code and get any resources that you need. You'll see an array of things. If you want to watch more episodes, because we talk about a lot of good things, you can catch up on past seasons and see what we have coming up. Go to www.dcnshiv.org/podcast. And listen, take the survey, talk to us. If you're watching this on social media, if this is a clip that you're watching, comment, tell us what you think about the conversation we had, because we definitely want to hear your voice. Until next time, bye guys.